What's up, Rockstars, and welcome to my official details video for Anastyr. We're going to be going over a lot of the high-level stuff so that you can go into the campaign, you can go into my review knowing more or less how to actually play the game, what the concepts are. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Thank you to my channel sponsor, Into the AM. Support the channel and get an awesome premium shirt I designed with them by using the link in the description below to purchase Eternal Guardian. From the lopsided crown, wolves, Norse throne, and more, this shirt is spectacular, and you can save 10% off when buying this fantastic shirt. Check it out and many other awesome shirts via the link down below. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that this channel is possible. If you appreciate the videos I make every single week for you guys and you can give even $1 a month, there is a link down below and I greatly do appreciate your support. Thank you so much. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, now first of all, I want to get the setting straight for you guys. So this is situated chronologically between the sinking of Atlantis and the Great Flood that later drowned the world. A remarkable Bronze Age unfolded around this time. This was the time of legends with raw magic and fierce conflicts spanning the luxuriant jungles and steaming swamps of what would one day become the Mediterranean Sea. Heroes gathered from all corners of the continent for an epic quest to save the world from the threat posed by Anastyr, the Dragon Queen. So if you didn't know, Anastyr is actually the name of this Dragon Queen, this big bad, and you are on a quest to stop that. So with that out of the way, with the setting there, let's go ahead and discuss the game at a very high level. And I'm just going to kind of go through the motions. We're going to be talking about a few different things here, but first and foremost, Anastyr can best be described as inspired by a classic side-scrolling beat-em-up genre of video games like Golden Axe. So if you've seen Golden Axe or even like the Streets of Rage and stuff like that, this game was inspired by that. So keep that in mind. You're going to have these side-scrolling tiles that kind of slot out, and you always have these, east and west tiles that you're going to be moving across from left to right, going through the level, as it were. Now, while it does have side-scrolling, the game board is a fixed size to 2 tiles at any given time, so it doesn't grow too large. This isn't a game that's going to expand as you progress through the adventure and get bigger and bigger, and the board table space, aspect changes or anything like that. You'll always have those 2 tiles that you'll be going through at any given time. Now, while you're doing that, you'll be having really 2 attack types. So this is a beat 'em up. You're going to be attacking things. And really, the 2 ways you're going to be doing that is through your technique cards that then form combos, or your special fury card. Combos are listed on each player board, and they are different, and they use different technique cards and different combinations to do special things that way. And so the aspect there is that you have these technique cards, that each technique card does something special, but then if you use certain technique cards in a certain order, you then do a combo which then does another thing a little bit better, or does something special, some kind of special ability. So that kind of gives you both a short-term reward for the technique card, but then there's a long-term reward there too as you slot those at the bottom of your player board. And then of course, combos are driven by that technique card. Now, those technique cards are part of a technique deck that consists of 6 generic and 5 unique cards for each hero. So you kind of have some standard ones that allow you to do, most basic things. So everybody has reactions and stuff like that, because you can play these cards either on your turn to do the technique there. Sometimes they're in a reaction. For instance, if you have to defend and you have a defense card, stuff like that can also happen. And then you have those unique things as well. That's paired with a unique ability that each hero also has. So all in all, the heroes actually seem fairly unique in each one. Now, over the course of the campaign, this technique deck and the cards will actually be upgraded, and they will change as you kind of, grow as a character across this campaign. So what you start with won't be what you're doing, all the way at the end of the campaign. It'll change and kind of morph and keep things fresh that way. Conversely, I mentioned Fury. Fury is something that you can either gain or lose through various actions, and it can change all the time, either per character or by the cards you're doing, or even the mission that you're on or the adventure you're on. And once your Fury reaches the maximum, you then get to flip your Fury card over and get to use your Fury attack, which is like this all-out massive attack that you can do. Great for something like on a mini boss or something like that. We'll get more into that very shortly. Now, before we move off of this player board, I do want to note that the actual trackers on the side are going to change. Those are now actually going to be spinners, so they're little wheels that you can spin that show the appropriate number, so you can spin it up or spin it down. That's less finicky, and it provides a little bit of elevation, so when you slot cards underneath, they slot underneath just fine. So kind of a 2-for-1 there by swapping those from those tracks you see now to essentially a little spinner that you'll kind of move around. Now, I mentioned an adventure and I mentioned campaigns. Let's talk about that. When I say adventure, I just mean a scenario. There are different adventures you're going to go on. And while each of these can be played independently as a one-off, you can also string them along on a narrative adventure that allows you to kind of grow as characters and kind of do the normal campaign style stuff. Now, adventures have objectives that are shown on these cards, and you have several of these cards, and each card will have a primary objective and sometimes even a secondary objective. Once those objectives is complete, you flip over the card and it'll give you further instructions. Often it'll be to do more things. Eventually you're going to flip over the card and it'll say adventure completed, and that means you have won. You lose if you are KO'd and there are no more heroes from the hero pool to pull from. In other words, there is no player elimination in this game. If you do die, if you are knocked out, that hero is out of that adventure, but you do have a pool of other adventurers you can put right in, and they actually teleport essentially right into where the other person died, and everybody around them, all the enemies are actually stunned, so you can kind of come in and do that. Again, very reminiscent of the video game style of things, where you just press continue, you feed in that extra quarter to keep going, and that is kind of the style there. But eventually you do run out of those credits, and then it's game over, so try not to get KO'd. Now, another way to end the mission is to run out of event cards. So you have these event cards that happen each round, and then there are a limited amount of tiles that you essentially are going to be going through, and eventually those run out. And if you've not completed your mission in time and you've run out of level, well, then that's that. Alright, so who is going to be KOing you? Well, there are enemy types. Those are minions and specialists. Those are the two main ones. And there are different ranks. There are some that are veterans that are just kind of tougher. And then there is a rank 1, a rank 2, and a rank 3 of those. Except the specialist is only rank 1 and rank 2. And then there are actually mid-bosses and full bosses. Now, these bosses are actually kind of interesting because you can't actually damage them right away. You have to figure out their mechanic, figure out their essentially what combo you need to be able to get through with them. It kind of mimics learning a boss in something like a Dark Souls style game, where you aren't sure going into it exactly how to go about the battle. But then once you figure it out, once you pay attention and you learn that, then you can exploit that to actually beat the boss. So it's kind of a start with the boss being like, oh my gosh, this is difficult, and then going to this is difficult, but we can manage it. It's kind of, I think, the idea there. But that's the general mechanic behind that. Now, it's not just all enemies. There are creatures that are around as well, and they can actually be tamed and sometimes ridden as even a mount, so you can actually get onto the mount, and the mount, it gets a special ability, and they also increase some of your stats and allow you to do various things while on them, which is pretty cool. But you do have to kind of maintain control of the beast as you have them, whether they're just your companion or whether you're actually riding them as a mount. Either way, you're going to have to check that each turn and make sure that they are still with you. Now, I'm going to be getting into a few different things here, but before I do that, I need to discuss one thing, and that's the magic system in this game. It is called art. So there are arts, which are essentially the magics that you're doing here. So just keep that in mind anytime I mention art. It just means magic. So heroes belong to one of 4 classes. So you're going to pick one. They're all unique. However, they do belong in these 4 classes, which kind of generally tell you kind of their style. So for instance, there are warriors with lots of combat cards. So their technique cards are all about that combat, and that's definitely going to be their highest stat there. Then they have the tank, which is obviously the highest defense, and then lots of defensive technique cards are going to have a lot of reactions to that to be able to kind of be that tank. There's also the shaman. They have the highest art stat. So again, that's magic. And they have mostly art cards in their technique deck. The rogue is actually kind of interesting because they are actually the balanced stat wise, and their technique deck varies between the rogues, but is also pretty robust. So they're able to adapt to a lot of different situations, kind of be a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. So they do kind of well in everything. Now, as heroes get injured, they will become weak and critical. What that means is you have a heal action, and that determines how many die you roll. So the more hurt you are, typically the more you'll actually heal up. So you might only heal for a few when you're not too hurt, but then, when you're really hurt, you'll heal for a lot. And that's actually kind of interesting. It allows you to kind of be hurt more often. You're not going to be at the top health because it's not as worth it to you to heal up. And then also there are severe injuries that you can get. They go against your card limit of 3 that are in your hand, and you can get rid of them with the heal action as well. Now, before we get into all those actions, and there's quite a few, let's talk about the main phases of play. There are 5 phases, but the phases here are very loosely used here. There's really one main phase, and the rest are kind of pretty quick. There is the hero preparation phase. There's the initiative phase, the activation phase, the enemy spawn phase, and the end of round phase. Now, the hero preparation phase just means discard any cards that you want that aren't severe injury cards. You can't get rid of those unless you heal, and then draw back up to your 3 technique cards total, or 3 cards in your hand. So that's a severe injury, or severe injuries will keep affecting you until you get rid of them. That's it for that phase. Next is the initiative phase. Now, normally nothing happens here, but sometimes chaos literally ensues. So you can have a chaos event that essentially makes it to where you shuffle all of your activation cards and then randomize that activation. So normally you have a track of when everybody's activating. Sometimes that chaos messes it all up. However, we're not all about random here. And so if the hero has a leader token, they can actually discard that to swap any single activation card with any other card. You can move an enemy farther back. If the activation ends up to where it's enemy, and then hero, you can make that hero go at the very beginning instead of the very end. So you can kind of counter a very, very bad activation chaos event. But either way, it's going to be chaotic, and you're going to have to change your plans accordingly. And you have to get rid of that leader token. Which brings us to the activation phase. This is the main phase where all the action takes place. Now, there are a lot of actions you can do, and it's kind of outside the scope of this video to explain every single one. So I'm just going to list them. Most of them are pretty straightforward. I might give a few tidbits on some of them, but for the most part, I'm just here to list them for you so you can kind of get a sense of the things you're able to do on your turn without me regurgitating the whole rulebook at you, so this video stays nice and short. Okay, so some actions that you can take on your turn are a prepare combo action, perform technique, maneuver. It's really just move and attack, or just move. Focus. That actually gives you a reroll ability that you can kind of reset. Heal. We've talked about that before. Interact. Tame creature. Throw enemy. Yes, you can pick up enemies and throw them at other enemies as an attack. Super cool. There's trigger combo, unleash fury, use mount, and use loot. A lot of those I think are very straightforward, and you can kind of get a sense of them. There's no real need to bog this video down with too much there. Now, you may only perform each of these actions once per activation, so you're not doing 2 heals, for instance. You can't just max heal yourself and just do a whole bunch of actions there. In this, you'll also be going on enemy turns. Enemies follow a very straightforward AI. That's mostly about the same for all of them. There are some spawning events as well, and the event card can also be drawn at each round. Kind of, it'll be drawn. The spawning of enemies also spawns beasts, and it tells you where it is. Really, for the enemies, you're going to be spawning them either on the very east or the very west, and so they can come in from the sides of the boards, essentially either behind you or in front of you, and you'll spawn all of them that you kind of see based off the point that it shows. And so, a rank 3 will be here, and a rank 1 veteran will be here, and, vice versa. And it just, it's very straightforward here, and it tells you which tile it's going to be on, of course, as well. And then the beasts are noted on the top section, and there'll be a little graph to show exactly where they pop up in that tile. That brings us to the end of round phase. And really, this is just an event deck check to see if the event deck is empty. If it is, then it's game over. So that's pretty straightforward. And there are some end of round keyword resolution stuff to go for. If you have anything that goes to the end of the round or activates at the end of the round, this is the time to do it. And really, that's it for the phases. Like I said, most of them are kind of, phases and name only, just for some structure. And most of it's really just that activation phase. Now, that kind of streamlining, that kind of ease of play, you'll see in the combat as well. So let's go and talk a little bit more about the combat before wrapping things up with a few other notes. So enemy attacks can be physical or through arts. So some enemies will attack through magic, some enemies will attack physically, and you defend against them either with your magic or with your defense. Now, either way, it is deterministic with a known value when the enemies attack. They have a set value, and then additional enemies are just +1 to that value if they're identical, targeting the same enemy. So group attacks go very smooth. You're not having to do a whole bunch of rolls. It's all deterministic. You're just rolling your defense. So while that's deterministic, your defense is based off of die roll, based off your stats, but you can, of course, have a reroll token that you can refresh with that focus action. You can get +1s, to bonuses to your stats. You can get extra dice. There's a lot of boons and bonuses you can get there as well. And there are partial defenses. So even if you are trying to get, let's say, 4 as the attack, there's some enemies attacking you, and you only get 2 in your defense, that's not a complete loss, because your health that you minus is only the difference. So you'd only lose 2 health there. So any success is still a success. So you won't ever feel like you really botched it unless you do roll all blanks. It should be very rare with the reroll, with the bonuses and all of that. And when it does happen, it's kind of a big moment, of course. But for the most part, you'll be able to defend some or all of the attack as you kind of go and scuffle with all of these enemies that you're fighting. Now, another thing you can do is those reaction cards. So I mentioned some of these technique cards are a reaction, to like doing a defense test, and you can buff your defense that way. And there is even some teamwork there. Teammates that are nearby can also pitch in and help a little bit. So suffice it to say, there's a lot of options available to you to determine how much you want to defend against this attack. And much of it happens afterwards, not even just before the roll. Alright, so that's enough about that. It's pretty straightforward. Otherwise, you're playing cards, you're rolling dice, especially the Fury die. You'll roll 1 die for the Fury as it directs. And that's pretty much Anastyr in a nutshell. It looks like it plays pretty smoothly. I'll for sure tell you more in my review. If you're not subscribed, be sure to, so you can see that review when it pops up. That'll actually be very, very soon for you guys. And before I leave you, I do want to note that there is a solo mode. It's a dedicated solo mode. There are rules for it. You will be playing 2 heroes, not just 1. And there's a few other changes as well. They get a little bit more actions. There's some change to how heals work and stuff like that. Very minor. Literally, it's like 3 or 4 paragraphs in the rules as they currently are. It's nothing major where it's a whole different style of game. Just a few tweaks here and there to make it playable. And then it's pretty much just a 2-player game at that point. And the prototype rules already have a definition section at the very beginning for common terms where they define stuff like adjacency. Now, I know that's not really telling you how the game plays, but I'm hoping to convey at least where the game is at within its rules and kind of give you a sense of where they're going. So very professional looking, and this was actually pretty easy to learn, pretty easy to talk to you guys about. If you have any questions at all, though, feel free to ask them down below, and I can answer them, or perhaps somebody else can. They've done a lot of dev blogs, stuff like that. There'll be links in the description to, of course, the Kickstarter page and maybe a few other articles that they have, their Facebook page, stuff like that. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you appreciate these detailed videos where I tell you about the game that you are going to spend hundreds of dollars on, well, then be sure to give the video a like so I know that this was well worth my time to do. And again, any feedback, of course, is always welcome. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you guys again very soon.